Welcome to yet another session in GameCity Kajaani. This time we will be talking about the role of analytics in premium games with a heavy emphasis on PC games. Today I will dig deeper into the topics that we briefly covered in the bootcamp that we handled and hopefully manage now to tie in those sessions into the actual game design work. Also, if someone was here last week, as I hope everyone was, I did decide to push this earlier on popular request. Originally, this had been planned on a slightly later stage, this session. Anyway, let's move forward. Once again, the biggest obstacle I see with startup teams and even on professional games is that people fall in love with their projects. They develop an amazing game only to find out that no one really wants that game, that it doesn't find the audience. And to me, that is the biggest pity, because that can be predicted already at the very earliest stage. You should have arguments why this game has a fighting chance to be successful in one of the most competitive businesses out there. And once again, a reminder for the Captain Obvious, which we will slowly be going towards, is indeed that you should design the game early. Well, that's my responsibility in mentoring you guys. And as such, I now start encouraging on booking one-on-one meetings with me. But basically, before you start developing a game, I'm heavily in the camp of doing the design first, so that before you start developing, minimize the work that you need to throw out, so that your game should have no major holes, how it works and why it would be fun before you jump into developing it. And indeed, game design's role is to minimize the iteration need. It is the cheapest place where to make changes into the project this very stage. So rushing to develop before you have a clear idea what makes the game fun, well, you're bound to then do work that you will throw out of the window. Sure, that happens in any case to some extent, but game design's role is to minimize that. Second thing is indeed to know your game, to figure out what makes it stand out. Why should it have a fighting chance? If you remember my Limingan Tuli Prisma example, why would it be in that imaginary shop the game that stands out? That why it would shine in the bookshelf or the store shelf, or why would someone talk about your game? So I have been pinpointing unique selling points. Today we will cover a little bit of that, and then next session I will help you nail down your unique selling points. Another element is having good design pillars, so that when you do have your unique selling points, why this game deserves to have a fighting chance, design pillars are what guides you towards delivering that awesome experience. Design pillars don't need to rely any unique elements, but it is the pillars upon which your game stands upon. Also a little bit today on the topic, but deeper in the next session. And today we will cover more on the knowing the competition, but not yet on the comparative analysis, which we will discuss heavily next time. But today we dig a lot deeper in how to figure out the competition in general, how to find which are the closest competitors, not just like gut feeling, but basically in the sense that what are your players, the fans of this genre, what are they playing? Later we will try to find arguments why they would switch from that game to your game, or buy your game instead of that dominant game in the genre. And my advice indeed is that if you don't have good edge on any of the three, then go back to drawing board. Make changes into the design. You don't need to aim, and you basically shouldn't aim to be the objectively best all-round game in the genre, though there is nothing wrong with ambition, but typically being objectively best also has something to do with money that you have, how big your team is, how much time you have, and, well, experience as well. But from specific angle to specific player, your game should be the best. So nailing down those unique selling points, that is the key. So this slide you have also seen before. On analyzing or how to approach game design, I always have 3 points. We now go today back to analyzing the sales potential. Last session was analyzing the target audience. I hope everyone has done that exercise that I hinted towards, but on one-on-one, if you have any troubles with it, I'll be happy to help out. And then we will be moving towards analyzing your own game. Today, some sets there as well. And indeed, the overall thing of today's session or any analytics is to save time and effort from developing games that are doomed to fail. I don't like being the non-encouraging person, but at the beginning of the stage, beginning of the project, it is the best time to realize that most games don't deserve to exist. There is so many games out there that why do something that isn't a shining, exciting example within its genre? It doesn't have to be production values, the biggest game, but rather with design that is the easiest way how to differentiate from competition, how to provide hopefully somehow familiar experience, but with a twist that makes it easy to get into and easy to absorb into. What we will be today doing on top of what I thought earlier is to teach you how to calculate return of investment point. Basically meaning that how you should know how many copies do you need to sell before you start making a profit. And then you should be learning how to calculate expected income, which is building a scenario and then evaluating different game concepts. Hopefully, this would be shared experience with all of the teams, so you could reflect on that, oh, that team did this calculation and they got expected income of this. Ours is that. So the initial fighting chance, which one has it bigger, more probable that this will turn into a profitable project. If you're one of those who are considering multiple game concepts, that's what I like to do. Particularly in previous company where I worked, we were constantly selling multiple game concepts. And before we started selling anything, the internal process heavily relied on calculating the expected income to figure out which project is easier to sell than the other. Nothing wrong with falling in love with your own projects. That's why we are in the business. After all, we love games, but you should still keep a rational eye on your own projects and make the games that are more probable to be a successful game. And of course, what basically helps is if you get the expected income, then you can go back and figure out that, okay, how long can we spend on this game so that it still makes sense, financial sense. That if we could reach sales position of this, then we would be profitable. But if we could do the game in half the time or with pixel art instead of very high quality art or whatever, then that all impacts on the return of investment point and how many copies you need to sell. and then being analytical about your own game. So instead of relying just gut feeling, you would have rational arguments to discuss which direction the game should take. And when eventually you will be selling your games to publishers or investors, they expect to get their money back X times, and so should you. You shouldn't be planning just on the return of investment point that, hey, if we sell this many copies, we get enough money to survive. You should be aiming to making games that sell a lot so that you can make better games, you have less stress, you have the best workplace, and so forth. And as a reminder, when publishers are financing, hopefully one day, your projects, they will be doing the math that, okay, do we believe that not just that it returns the investment, but that are we bound to make a profit with this game? And that needs to include your share in it as well. So why not learn the same math that the publishers will be doing? And today's topic indeed is to do that math and then evaluate concepts based on that, so that you get to see what impacts the chance of success when trying to get funding for your game. I use publisher partially because it's more familiar to me than investors, but also because publishers are relatively easy. Sure, I was just last week in Umeå Game Conference, and some of them evaluate 2,000 games every year and only publish 10 games out of those. So it's very hard to get the yes, but most of the games basically fail also on the very earliest stage, where you basically are. Publishers knowing how to market, of course, increase the success chance dramatically compared to self-publishing. But why they are so easy is because they require only three things. Is the game good? Well, I'm gonna be mentoring you on that topic. Can you do it? Well, Jay, Klaus, and others will help you with that. Particularly, your prototype is the first evidence for yourself, at least, that can you do it? And third, can they sell enough copies? And that's today's topic, at least 50%. So when all of those turn into a yes, then they will sign. They will give you money. So that is just a reminder that there is more than just the game to consider. So how do you do it? Well, every game designer's favorite tool, which should be sweet spreadsheets. So let's start with the basics. First, now digging indeed deeper on the genre analysis. So overview, what you want to consider is indeed how many copies you need to sell. You need to understand that Steam takes their share, and it's only 70% that goes to publisher and developer, which is also that if you intend to use publisher or self-publish, how much of that will belong to you with the recoup conditions and so forth. If you're using Unreal Engine, then after first €1,000,000, they will start taking their share. The recoup before, in many of the publishing deals, publisher might recoup, basically earn their risk first before the revenue share starts. Hopefully you would make a deal where the revenue share gets better. The recouping just is that the publisher is more bound to earn their money back, but hopefully you would earn from the first copy already something. The value-added tax or sales tax needs to be taken into consideration, the game price, the price difference between rich and poor countries, the fact that on PC, majority of games will be bought on discount, and DLCs and so forth. And all of these should be grounded in reality, not wishful thinking. And as it happens, I have done half the work for you because the spreadsheet that you get the screenshot here on the left, well, I will basically share a ready tool for you where you can do exactly all of those. And after you have figured out key answers to those, then what you need to do is build scenarios, which is that how many copies does the best X% in this genre sell? How many copies does it mean if you get to the top 1% or top 10% or top 20%? And then build the scenarios. How many euros will that mean to you after the recouping and so forth, sales discounts and so forth. And then the beauty is that then you should be then estimating how easy or how probable is it that you would reach the top X. The stronger your unique selling points is, the more arguments you have that there is a reason why you could reach top 10%. If you're a Me Too game, well, even from one of the best studios in Finland, Rovio, it was only 53rd game that started turning a hefty profit. So make sure you have arguments why people would love your game. Now, the big question, of course, is that what is a realistic sales figure? Where can we get those? Well, let's jump into that. There is, of course, several data sources. So there is basically one good one and lots of pseudo ones. Sure, very opinionated things, but most of the services that you will be using use so-called box lighter method, which I call bullshit method, which is a Steam review multiplier, which is easy to see why it's totally inaccurate, even if those services try to balance it out with some real world data that they get from actual sales copies. But basically, if a sales estimate relies on Steam review multipliers, that basically emphasizes hardcore games over casual games. Casual games get less reviews. They are a lot better on games that already have a community around it, that have people who have followed the game long and then reach to review your games. Then they are automatically estimated to have sold more. The problem with this box lighter method is that if you use those services and you check out their estimates for expansions that are sold separately, well, you can easily see that often the estimates for DLCs say twice as many copies sold as the base game, which of course doesn't make any sense. But when most eager fans buy the DLCs, then of course comparably they will have more Steam reviews. So then the estimate is a lot bigger. Well, major differences. There are other major differences. So Steam Spy basically gives you the highest estimates, which is my ultimate favorite for any data source. It doesn't rely on box lighter like pretty much all the others. It uses the polling method, same where gallups are done. Basically, meaning that it checks every day, all the user accounts, checks how many games they own, and then makes an estimate based on the location that people, where people are living, so that it's representative. Steam Spy used to be totally accurate before GDPR. Now it uses the polling method. So it's not as accurate as it was 10 years ago. Sadly, it's run by just one person, so it's a small service, but it's the most reliable. GameLAB is what a lot of the industry uses, and comparing to Steam Spy estimates, I would say it provides roughly 50% smaller estimations on how many copies have been sold. And VG Insights is another popular one, and that provides you with even smaller estimates. But those both use box lighter method, so it's not as as good. There is, however, more to this story. So, for example, Steam Spy always provides a lot smaller estimates to any adult or mature games, which is because people who buy adult or mature games, by default, the setting is hide those ownerships. So Steam Spy can't really accurately estimate those that users automatically hide their ownership in. There is other elements like GameLAB. There is a misspelling. It's GameLAB, not GameLAB. They tend to underestimate heavily even AAA games that originally launched on consoles and came after to PC, or that if it was Epic exclusive, for example, and then came to Steam or Origins or other Ubisoft's own platforms, they tend to be ranked a lot less. And there is some other issues, like many of the latest games appearing on data as having been launched in 1970s, which can be fixed if you manually fix those issues. How to use those? Well, that's why I'm going to use time to jump into the services for a bit. I hope all of you are now seeing my GameLAB site. So first of all, if you have a user account here, this is the games list. Go to this page, which is now available. Select from the tags which subgenre you want to use. Let's say JRPG, for example, as I know one of you are kind of JRPG stylish game doing, even though if you guys didn't use the term. Then it goes through the database. Here is all the games that are ranked in JRPG, 3,890, and then you can download it as CSV. It compiles it, and then you have access to the actual data. It's compiling. This is so fast that I can quickly show the entire process. Then you open it. It looks like this, but no worry. Select the first sheet, put text to column, next, select comma, yes, and voila, a lot more readable. Now you have how many copies it has sold. You can, if you want, you can filter out free-to-play games, any games that have the price set to 0. There is also the class, is it AAA game, AA game, indie game, and so forth. And you have lots of cool data. For Steam Spy, it is the same thing, except that the best bit, selecting a tag, doesn't work, which is the biggest reason why nowadays I am using other services on top of this, but you can get entire genres out of it, and similarly download a very, very long spreadsheet. And then indeed, in the next step, you just select all the games within your genre. If there is 10,000 games, top 1% naturally means the game that is on a 100th position. Then it's, if you reach top 1% in that genre, in a genre that has 10,000 games, the top 1% means that. Getting to top 10 would mean that your game would sell the best 1,000th position, and so forth and so forth. I'll quickly check the chat if there is any questions regarding this. Doesn't seem like it at the moment, so let's jump back to the PowerPoint slides. We'll get at the end more accurately onto the previous bit. Now, as I said, Steam Spy gives the highest estimates, but even Steam Spy isn't perfectly accurate. They themselves say that they wouldn't trust any games that have less than 30,000 copies because the margin of error is so big. However, even if you do use Steam Spy, it doesn't matter. You should be aiming to sell more than 30,000 copies. In most cases, if you have more mouths to feed than just one, you should be selling more than 30,000 copies. So that I still feel that that's the best there is. And with the price of 10 euros a month, that's like a joke cost. GameLAB costs 70 euros. I encourage doing that as well. I'll get back to at the end how to combine so that you would get the best of both worlds. Because why would you need that is basically because the best function how to also get the subgenres from Steam Spy requires nowadays a bit of extra effort, which is a bit annoying to do. Then on to the real beauty, which is the scenarios. And scenarios indeed means that you have, for example, 25 scenarios where you might end up in, or I always use 25 scenarios. You can add as many as you want. In the screenshot, for example, here, there is only 10 scenarios. So basically, well, 9 with sales and then catastrophic being project cancelled, that you never launch it. Basically, you need to get from the data source the number of copies sold and then let the spreadsheet do its magic and calculate how many euros would that mean for you. There is also this probability bit which I've built in, which will give you weight to your scenarios if you consider what is realistic. Probabilities is mostly sensible if you plan on analyzing several of your own game concepts. Basically meaning that, well, if you're one man and an idea, then you should weight down all the scenarios so that most likely individual games have a lot smaller chance of success than if you have an actual team. You should take into your team experience. If you are later talking with publisher, then take into account their size and experience. But most importantly, how risky is your game concept and how good are your unique selling points? You could highlight that okay, let's consider base builder with great USPs, or let's consider cheaper project but with worse USPs. Then you could weight down how probable your concept is, and so forth. And this would give you the expected value. If mathematical terms, odotusarvo, is not familiar, it is the same as if we throw a regular dice 1,000 times and calculate everything on like some all the throws up. I would say the end result would be 3,500 because of a single dice throw. The expected value is 3.5. Most likely, when you throw a dice, you get 3.5. Basically meaning that if you would throw 1,000 times, then the 3.5 is how many on average you would get. Sure, 1 is as probable as 6, but where is the expected value? Now, once you've done this exercise for your game, the most probable outcome is that the numbers are depressing. Holy gosh, how can we ever make a profit? We need to aim so high. Well, there is a lot of things you can do still. One is that if your game is a success, you would plan so that it's easy to expand. Games that require a lot of content, let's say adventure game, let's expand it with another adventure. It needs new quests, new characters, new art. Very expensive to do. But if it's a more system-driven game, then maybe adding one mechanic allowing your game to feel fresh more exciting, and it's cheaper to do. So the big question is, can you expand your game with a relatively cheap expansions? And if the answer is yes, then take those into account. Well, the spreadsheet that you will get allows you to take that into account even if the answer is no, but then you better add a bigger budget for those DLCs or expansions. Now, the big question on DLCs and estimating their sales value is, of course, the attach value. How many players will buy at least one expansion? Now, this is, of course, something that as a developer, it's difficult for us to estimate. That's why already 10 years, I've always shown these spreadsheets as part of my sales process to publishers, because then I get to talk about what is the attach value I should use. And the feedback I've basically gotten from publishers who have information on so many more games being launched than I as a developer can ever have, and they've said that it varies heavily from 20 to 50%. Totally how eager your fan base is, then that's basically the difference between attach value. And a good average apparently is 35%. So out of 100 people who buys a game and likes it, 35 people would buy at least one expansion. And then figure out any consecutive expansions. How many who bought one expansion, how about the next one? The spreadsheet that I will share with you has a formula that takes this automatically into account, that like magic, if your scenario basically says that the DLC wouldn't be making a profit, it marks that in this scenario DLC is not made, which makes it easier for you to calculate that, okay, how much profit are we going to turn up if this game is a success? Logic here is that if you are successful, it makes sense to expand the game, and if it's not successful, then you won't be making the DLCs. But for your project, how awesome it is financially, it of course makes a dramatic difference if you can make cheap expansions in the scenarios where it's successful. You can play with the formulas yourself. So basically, if you did without the DLCs the scenario, then do it again and see how your scenarios improve if you are making games that have a good DLC value or DLC potential. A quick look at this stage to the actual spreadsheet. How does it look like? I hope you are now seeing it. The green area is where the basic information is, exactly what I'm coloring now. There is just the name of your game, the genre. You can add how many games are there in the genre. Don't worry about the figure at the moment. This is an old template. Nowadays, in 4X genre, if I remember right, there is 400 games, so this number is always growing the longer time passes. Here you add the scenarios, how many copies in this scenario you would sell. Are you using Unreal Engine, Steam Share? Are you using Publisher or not? So 50-50 at this stage, but you can switch it to 0 and 100 or whichever. VAT, surprisingly small. This default value also is that some countries, mostly United States, has states where there is no sales tax at all, and then Nordics have quite high VAT. So originally I used a lot closer to Finnish VAT, but then with feedback from publishers, I've put it a lot down. The game price and this weird USD to Euro exchange rate is basically there to make the scenarios a little bit worse so that the difference between rich countries and poor countries would be taken into account somehow. And indeed, the effect of long tail sales that if you are calculating 2 years after the launch how many copies would have been sold, then a good rule of thumb is that it's the same as all the games having been sold in 60% of the original price, so 40% on discount. If you want to check out the immediate after launch scenarios, where is the return of investment point, then switch this to 100%. Last but not least is 2 figures still added. Here, how much money are you asking from a publisher? And here is some extra cost that you allow them to recoup before your share starts going. This is things like trailers, localization, QA, and so forth. Typically, in a good case, only money that they spend outside, like not their own salaries. But this is always agreed on a separate case. So basically, here you can see that, okay, total money from, is it 2.5 million copies with $20 or €20 game would provide 28 million, but without VAT it's 26 million, out of which Steam would take 8 million, so 18.7 million would be would go to you and publisher, out of which 9,164,000 would come to you after recoup from the publisher. Here, indeed, you should mark down the scenarios. So what in your genre is the top 10 position, top 15, top 17.5. Oh, there seems to be some typos, or this is the template, so you need to figure out these numbers yourself and then just copy the results to here. And if you are evaluating multiple concepts, this is the expected value, which helps you evaluate multiple different concepts. The blue set is indeed the DLC thing. Blue is just the formulas, so don't touch those or you might break the formulas. And the other colored areas is for different DLCs. There is how much money would you get from a publisher. The figures in the template are super small, but 10,000 of course isn't anything for a DLC cost, so improve those, and it has similar formulas as those ones, as the above one. After the session is over, I can show how were the different figures for my previous company for different companies, so you get the idea how easy it is to evaluate the success chances between different companies. But when you do this exercise, then you're not surprised when the publisher, even on a first meeting of a concept that you might love, like I did of Omega Thule, says that, yeah, the sales potential in this genre is so small. And then you're like, yeah, that's true. My own Excel also showed that, which was one of the reasons why we abandoned that that project, even if we did a prototype for it. Yeah, let's jump back to the slide set. And I hope that, I know there is a lot to cover, so hopefully you have had chance to process what you heard. So, what are the common pitfalls? Well, there is a lot. Main element I already described in the bootcamp, which is that your genre is overcrowded. How to remedy that? Well, basically don't make games to that genre. Go to somewhere easier. Or have mind-blowing unique selling points. The same example I used in Kajaani. One of the worst genres you could go for is platformers. Every student project, every game jam has someone making platformers, so there is more than 13 in a dozen in platformers. But if you would be making the first platformer where every pixel is simulated, that basically transforms that experience into a Noita one, which basically means that no other game has that experience. And that's why Noita is an outlier. Whether you consider it as a roguelike or platformer, both are overcrowded genres, but neither have any other game where every pixel is simulated. Mind-blowing unique selling point. A reason why that game has a chance to be outlier in the genre. Another main element is that the genre is very top-heavy, meaning that it sells really well, like action RPGs, but it's mostly just the top 1% that sells really, really well. Or similar problem often relates to this, but not always, is that, well, okay, the competition is AAA games. How to remedy that? Well, basically the same way as on the genre being overcrowded, so don't go there or have mind-blowing unique selling points. But best way is don't go as an indie where main rivals are AAA games. There is better niches where the success chances are a lot higher. And only consider going to those genres if you clearly can beat objectively a AAA game from specific angle for specific players. If you don't have rational arguments at the get-go why someone would play who loves Red Dead Redemption, why would they choose your game over Red Dead Redemption? Then don't go to the same genre as Red Dead Redemption. Even if you love Wild West. But maybe in Wild West there is something that you can do better than Red Dead Redemption, which is a side note for Red Dead Redemption or something. Another issue that you might have is that the genre doesn't have a high hit potential. So it sells okay, but the top isn't so high. This is a very remediable issue. Then you just make sure that your production values isn't killing the financial business case. Translation, try to make sure that you don't spend so much time making that game so that it still makes sense. If you're approaching a publisher, you're asking for very little money compared to how successful you need to be. Or if you're like you are now bootstrapping, then make sure that the follow-up games or whichever, that your expectations are low enough that, okay, well, this genre is being played from top 10s, they are similar to top 5, but the numbers are small. So try to make those games faster. Another issue often is that your game is a mix between genres. That, okay, it's kind of a roguelike or it's kind of a management or whichever mixture. What I would personally do, you could do a mix-up of genres in GameLAB, selecting only games that are in both genres. But I would advise against that because the different genres have different player base. So what I would do if I were you is making several scenarios for both or all of the genres that you touch, and then highlight in marketing and design decisions the features that fit better onto one or the other of the genres. That even if it's a character management RPG, then is it more management or more RPG? Well, I would then highlight whichever is a better genre and try to make sure that it fits to that audience better. Another example is that you could just take the bigger genre. Instead of all RPGs, you select a subgenre, JRPG, classical RPG, or something. classical RPG or action RPG or whatnot, and then just take the RPG as a main genre, because the top X will remain similar, relatively speaking. There is more games, but then so is those games selling more. So top one is relatively as difficult, regardless of how many games there are. Now, for the genres where I operate for the last almost 10 years, still in my latest company as well, for budgets of from 1 to 3 million, the return of investment can be even on top 20, top 25 sales positions. So that is relatively lucrative thing to consider if you are approaching publishers that sure better than 80% of the games, but hey, 80% of the games don't have a publisher, so it's then easier job for publishers to push that higher into those rankings. What else could be done? Well, you guessed it, unique selling points. I cannot emphasize more. Make only games that deserve to be made. It doesn't mean make complex games, but make your own games that are inspiring from some element. Stop to ponder games like the Baba Is You. Very easy to do, one person, or faster than light. On a high level, it's the same game as Star Citizen with 700 million euro budget. You do the same things, but in faster than light, that can be done by 2 people, and it's a huge commercial success. So consider the unique selling point. So make only games that deserve to be made. Now, this is the not considering your game, only the market kind of difficulty level. But there are, of course, other elements how to find arguments for your own team, but particularly for anyone you ask to take risk with you, basically anyone you ask money for or time, if it's in case of convincing accelerators or whatnot. And the other element than just looking at the genre, how competitive is it? If your goal post is small, then making a better aim might work just as well. Which ties this session back to the previous session as we were talking about target audience. So if someone hasn't seen it yet, just a quick recap. Games are not really escapism. Games are closer to identity politics. Sure, some games are more about escapism, but basically Quantic Foundry has found that what type of games we like is based on what type of people we are, and to us 12 different player motivations dictate what type of games we like. They've analyzed almost 2 million people, 1.7 million people, so you should analyze your game. Which motivations your game serves or should serve once it's done, and then you compare it to Quantic Foundry's players database and find the closest player archetypes, and that is your target audience. That is who you should keep in mind, and then that will give you those arguments why you would beat 60% of the games in your genre, or hopefully 80% of the games in your genre, and so forth. So you should find rational arguments. Why, when we make this game, why do they care about this game, and why does it appeal to enough players so that it will be a success? Now, there are other elements, game pillars and unique selling points. A quick recap, we will get more into the unique selling points when we do the comparative analysis. But basically, unique selling point is the thing that transforms your game into a novel experience. For me, for example, we made first XCOM style game that made melee as ballsy as shooting with guns with Company of Crime. That was our biggest unique selling point, and that helped us sign a game even when we didn't have a demo available. It was signed with just designs and pitch decks, because no one had made XCOM style game where melee combat is as ballsy as shooting with guns. Now I know that Noita was built on top of success from Crayon Physics, Baba Is You, and Legend of Grimrock, as those were creators of those three games were the people behind Noita. But I dare say if they had searched for publisher and financing, then saying that we are making a platformer where every pixel is simulated could have landed them with money. They didn't need the money, but that unique selling point is the reason why that game found the audience. Totally transforming that experience to something we haven't seen before. Unique selling points can be also harder to grasp, like my previous game, Great House of Calderia, which was a story generator grand strategy where you play through the epic moments. Basically having 1,000 different events, just like Paradox games, but instead of armies meeting or diplomatic negotiation being just some spreadsheet somewhere, you play through those moments. And that was yet another unique selling point, strong enough that we signed that game as well without a demo needed, without any playable prototype. So focus on your unique selling points. Now, game pillars or design pillars, a loved child has multiple names. That basically will help other people will help you convince others that you know what you're doing. Design pillars are basically the North Star of your game. What is this experience about? Those don't have to be unique. They can be what has been seen and tested, but they should be helping your team build towards the same goal. They should be there also to dictate which idea fits this game and which doesn't. So it should help decision making during the project. So the biggest thing that you guys should be doing is that you have some unique selling points, you have design pillars, and your player motivations, that they're all aligned. Your players care about the motivations you serve, your design pillars makes those motivations exciting, and at least one unique thing is so different that the familiar provides a new experience. And if these are all aligned, the chance of success is clearly higher. Basically, then you have arguments why, even if it takes to get to top 10%, but you have reasons that as long as this game is good, here are unique selling points, design pillars, and these are the motivations that we serve. That's why this game has a chance to get into the top 10 in its genre, or top 5. Hopefully top 1, but that's a rare case. So make sure all of these are aligned. So as a final thoughts, think differently. Really, if you're making a clone game, nobody really gets interested in that. It's easier to do clone games, sure. If your primary goal is to learn how to make games, then make those clone games. But remember, half of the games on Steam have less than 10 reviews. Less than 10 reviews. People should have 10 friends who buy and review that, but half of the 100,000 games have less than 10 reviews. So 50,000 games haven't managed to sell enough copies that they would have 10 reviews. So nobody really cares if you're making a clone game. So if you plan on making tiny tweaks on some successful game, you will always end up fighting with teams that are more experienced, that are bigger, they are better funded, they have more time to do it, and even then, most likely they are successful for the things that they did differently than what they did similarly. So make your own games. Don't just make what everyone else is making. That's the way to failure, not success. So unique selling point thinking helps a lot. That is the main reason why you could convince someone that your game would be an outlier in a very crowded or unviable genre. And if you get people that are believers that, hey, this would be cool, this would transfer that game into something really awesome, well, that basically means that that person might be so excited that they would start spreading the word, which basically means that you have a fighting chance. But if you're making games without any unique selling points, then they will be like, good, it's great that people have hobbies. I hope it goes well, but they don't take the extra mile to start helping you become success. And indeed, if you do your design work properly, it will increase your chance to sign deals and secure funding. And as I said, you can do that even without the demo, but sure, then you need to have experienced team like I had. But do the design properly. That will help you get resources to do that game. So that's it. Any questions or comments, I'll be happy to take those. And then after that, I will show you the difference between different games that in my previous company what we had. But now I check the chat.